Thank you.
And I am here alone.
Hi.
Dylan left me all alone to go have fun at conferences, but I get to be joined by Julie Johnstone, right?
Yes, yes.
And Lizbeth Selvig. And did I say that right too?
Hi.
So bad at names.
Yep, absolutely.
Just real quick, I am working on nothing. I am no, it's awful. No, I'm editing the same books I've been revising forever. And I'm working on a Western. But Julie,
I think you're from my mothership.
I'm editing and revising and working and I just all over the road. But so why don't you guys introduce yourselves and tell us what you're working on and what you're giving away?
Okay, I'm Julie Johnstone.
Well, go ahead, Julie.
Oh, sorry. I'm working. I have a release next Thursday. I write Scottish medieval romance and Regency romance.
Fun.
Yeah, my release next week is a Scottish thing. It's the 10th book in a series, so I'm really just kind of in prep mode for the release, and I'm doing a dual project with another writer next year, and so we've been kind of plotting back and forth for the last couple of weeks on that. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
How fun! Yeah. I write American historical and contemporary, but I read the crap out of some Regency. Like I'm so scared to write Regency, but I love it so much.
I love it too. That's actually
awesome. And
huh? Oh no.
All right. You said that's what, Julie?
Oh, that's where I started my career in the Regency. Yeah, and a couple years ago, I just kind of transitioned, picked up, added medieval. But this year I'll actually be going back to some Regency. So I'm excited. It's been a while.
Sorry, I'm like.
That's really cool. I am so out of the historical thing. I read it, but I don't know. You guys are way too smart for me. You know too much.
No.
So I love Scotland. We're heading for Scotland. And so I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, when are you going?
Lizbeth.
We're going the end of May. Next spring, the end of May.
We were just there in March. We took our kid to Edinburgh and just a couple places in Scotland. We'd been a couple years ago without them, and we took them in March. So I love it there. Obviously.
My vacations are
really
always moving.
Awesome. We were there.
Go ahead. Sorry, Lizbeth.
Oh, yeah. No, that's okay. There's a little bit delay, so I need to talk over you. But no, my husband and I are big hikers. And so we, in 2017, we hiked the West Highland Way, which goes from just north of Glasgow to up by Fort William.
Right.
And then we got to see Edinburgh and Glasgow, and then we took a bus up at Inverness, and it was great. So we loved it so much. Now we've talked my brother and his girlfriend, who are also they hike with us. We're going to go back and do some more hiking. So
nice.
It'll be cool.
Place.
I don't know if it's in Scotland or just like in England in general, but I heard there was like this amazing hiking like trip you can take, and then you stay in these cabins. You just kind of go up to a cabin and like stay in it for the night or whatever. I kind of read about this. I can't remember where it was. It was like years ago, but it was always on my list. Places to go and things to do. Hiking Scotland sounds amazing.
Well,
it's so beautiful. It really is.
And Linda is one of our she's one of our regulars, and she says to say hi to Jamie Fraser if you bump into him while you guys are over there. All right, so did Lizbeth?
Sorry, my computer. There we go.
Did you told us what you were
I'm back.
read? Sorry,
No, that's okay. No, I just had a release come out a week ago, Monday. I write mostly contemporary, and this one was part of a box set and kind of the sequel to my last book, which is what I'll give away today is a signed paperback copy of that one. But it was set in a world created by a couple of writer friends who added a little bit of land to Kentucky, I guess. They added a whole county to Kentucky. And it's they call it Chandler County, and it's set between Louisville and Lexington. And a lot of the stories take place around Kentucky Derby time. And then they created a whole Bible of things that, and a group of people. So I wrote a book last year called Missing by a Heartbeat that was about a racetrack scandal. My daughter happened to be an equine veterinarian, and years ago she gave me an idea for a book that I couldn't write then because she was working at a racetrack.
Yeah.
But now that she's got, in a regular practice, then I could write this story. So that's my story about a racetrack practice. And then I took two of the characters from that and gave them this little novella. It's part of my box set. And this one's called Missing One Angel. And I'll read from that later tonight. And that's the one that came out. So then my next project is a continuation of a 7-book series. I'm on book 5 of one called 7 Brides for 7 Cowboys.
I love it.
Okay, I'm going to have to read.
I know, right? The first 3 were put out by Avon. I was with Avon at the time, and then they decided they didn't want to do all 7. So I said, well, nuts to that. I'm going to finish it. So I did the 4th one, and now this will be the 5th one. And then I actually have a Scottish contemporary that I'm working on. I finished that I probably will just publish myself. So there you go. We have a little bit in common, Julie.
Yeah, absolutely.
I gotta say, I am in love with 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. I mean, I grew up watching that.
Oh, yeah.
I was the weird daughter. My mom, like when my sisters were all like watching all the new movies and stuff, and my mom would take me to the store so I could get Rodgers and Hammerstein movies and just any kind of old timey movies, and I would binge watch the crap out of those. And I love cowboys. I'm from Montana, so I'm totally reading that.
Well,
book.
I have to say this. Well, and I have to say it's not really a whole lot like the movie, sadly, and it was kind of the hook that my agent and my editor came up with together. And I went, who wants 7 books? They go, oh, this will be great. And all of the heroes aren't cowboys to start with, but it all takes place on a giant 50,000 acre ranch in Wyoming. So they all become cowboys. So there you go.
Now, have you ever been?
Like only it's run by women.
Have you ever been to Wyoming?
Yes, my aunt-in-law lived there for most of her life, and she was near Sheridan. I set mine a little farther west, kind of by Jackson.
Yeah.
But yeah, Wyoming's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. 1 second. I love Wyoming. That's like, I'm from Montana. And so we go through Wyoming a lot.
Oh, I love Montana.
Travel, coming and going. And I think Wyoming would be, if we can't retire to Montana, that's where the next place that my husband wants to be at. I mean, he loves it so much that the last time we were going through it, he just went right ahead and tore his ankle several places in Wyoming, just so he could say he went to a Wyoming ER, I think. But no, I'm kidding.
Oh my
gosh.
We love it.
We love that.
Okay, that's an unusual bucket list item. I have to say.
Yeah, no, that was our whole Hurricane Harvey thing that we experience. But I digress. I know we just talked about this before we came on the show, but Linda does want to know where you guys are from.
Birmingham, Alabama.
I'm from.
She's from next
I'm from
to Dillon.
Minnesota.
Yep.
I live by Dillon.
She does, yeah.
I don't know if she'll claim me or not, but yeah, I don't live very far. So we're about 30 miles south of Minneapolis. That's where we live. Taylor than me. Me. I'm a writer. I can make up my own grammar.
That's right.
All right. Well, do we want to get started with a little bit of reading? Lizbeth, you wanted to go first, right?
Sure, I'm willing. If you don't mind if I stick on my professor glasses and look like a geek, but
Go for
Oh,
it.
I have to
old
too.
age, as you can't.
All right.
All
Now,
right. Well, I will read you a scene. Go ahead. Okay. This is a scene from my most current book called Missing One Angel. And I'll set this up just a little bit. Sawyer Hawkins and Mallory Carrick are two grooms, work for a big racing stable. They, at the beginning of this book, get engaged. So it's an unusual romance in that we don't have to build the romance, it's already there. But what happens is there is a 13-year-old girl that comes into their life. And this scene is just as Sawyer is asking Mallory to marry him, and then they get the surprise of their life as they're getting ready to move their horses back from Churchill Downs to their winter home. So I will start here, and this is the scene where we get to meet all three characters for the first time. Mallory Carrick, please make me the real me complete, and I'll do my best to complete the perfect woman you already are. Will you marry me? The formal speech was totally uncharacteristic to his normal, easygoing personality. Mallory's happy laughter, giddy like a child's giggles, escaped through her fingers. They'd talked about this happening someday, so the question was no more a surprise than his hair color change. Nonetheless, he'd managed to shock her with his nervous, practiced words and completely unexpected timing. You planned this for today? He nodded. I lied about the horses being responsible for my long night. They were restless, but in truth, I just couldn't sleep. Aw, she prolonged his wait by taking his handsome face between her palms and kissing him slowly. I made you nervous. Yeah, like you're doing now, he wrinkled his nose. You can't possibly be worried I'd say no. He shrugged. You make my life interesting every day. Why not over this? She laughed again. Sawyer Hawkins, of course I'll marry you. He'd barely gotten the ring on her finger when a huge crash broke them apart. Mallory screeched, and together they spun toward the trailer. What the? Sawyer moved forward. One of the large side windows had come unlatched and hung open. The bang from it slamming down against the side still echoed. Maybe an animal got in there somehow, Mallory said. Someone's dog or a critter, a squirrel or something? Thought I heard noises earlier, but I didn't pay much attention. We'd better check it out. Last thing we need is one of the horses getting scratched or bitten by a rabid something stuck in the trailer. They approached the rear door and stared at each other in consternation as shuffling from inside clearly indicated something had gotten trapped. Very slowly, Sawyer unhooked the bar latch. Move back, he said. Whatever it is, they'll probably shoot out. Mallory grimaced. What's big enough to crash into a window and force it loose? The big enough thing that shot out of the trailer was so startling that for a moment it nearly got away, or rather, she nearly got away. A young girl in white and purple running shoes leaped to the ground and zipped past Sawyer. Her flying brown braids, nearly waist length, were frayed and disheveled. Her backpack was a ragged army surplus green. Lithe and soundless as a little deer, she bounded off without looking back. Sawyer shook off his surprise first and jumped after her, caught her within 3 steps, and held her for several seconds until she stopped struggling. I'm sorry. The voice was neither timid nor sincere. I was only looking around and someone locked me in. Let me go. I won't be back. Let me go. Sawyer held her carefully by one arm and brought her back to stand in front of Mallory. I'm going to let you go, he agreed, but don't you run or I'll send Mallory here after you. You don't want to mess with her. She looked up and boldly caught Mallory's gaze. Hazel and sparkling green gold fire, her eyes spit defiance and fearlessness, but a shiver of recognition snaked up Mallory's spine. Beneath the surface, the girl's emotions were anything but fierce. Fear and uncertainty were plain to anyone who knew how to read them, and Mallory did. She'd seen the same look on her in the mirror enough times when she was been this age. I'm Mallory, she said. What's your name? Hesitation the girl couldn't mask told Mallory the name about to come up was made up on the spot. Annie Smith. With her tongue firmly in her cheek, Mallory raised a brow. Okay, that'll work for now. Annie Smith, can you tell me how you got to be locked in the trailer? Was it open when you found it? Yeah, that'll work for now, she mimicked sullenly. Sawyer humphed, but Mallory sent him a warning look. She turned back and folded her arms, but said nothing. The young teen kept up the defiant act for a long moment, but finally hung her head. I opened it. I wanted to see inside. I've never seen a real one. Real trailer? Mallory asked. Annie Smith shrugged. She was pretty, if a little gaunt, with a heart-shaped face, long dark hair and lashes, and a short, slender build that hadn't yet started to fill out. So you opened the door and went in. The girl shrugged again, her eyes still focused on the ground. How did you get onto the backside, Annie? I walked. Nobody walks past the guard, and the area is fenced, Sawyer said. I'm good at getting in where I need to go. You needed something back here? The first time, the bravado crumbled ever so slightly. I was going to sleep and then leave. I wasn't going to hurt anything. Do you have parents around here somewhere? She sneered. I don't need parents. Sawyer grunted again. How old are you? None of your business. I just gave you free lodging for the night, he replied, his normal affability tucked away for the purposes of the interview. It is kind of my business. I recognize your voice. She lifted her gaze and stared at him, purposely putting her bravado back in place. You locked me in. Did I? Well, I'm sorry. Then my bad. Usually thoroughly check driver's licenses, criminal backgrounds, and next of kin before I hand a person the room keys. Guess that proves your point. You're good at sneaking in where you don't belong. Mallory wanted to halt him and soften the sarcasm in his words, but the girl straightened her shoulders and took it in with almost an appreciative look. I'm sorry, she said again. I'm leaving now. I'm supposed to be at the bus station. I already missed one bus being stuck in there. Oh, Mallory asked, where are you heading? Florida, she paused. To visit relatives. Which relatives? Once again, hesitation gave away the fact that she'd been caught off guard. My aunt. Well, if you missed your ride, she'll be worried. We should call her and let her know you're okay. Mallory waited for the reaction she fully expected, and it came with the undeniable vehemence of a kid backed into a corner. You don't have to call. I'll tell her myself. She glared, kicked hard at a rock that ricocheted off one trailer tire, and dug herself deeper into a hole. She doesn't have a phone anyway. I have to call her at work, and she's not there yet. Okay, we'll take you to the bus depot. Make sure you get off all right. No! Geez, you could be kidnappers or axe murderers. My aunt's name is Jane Smith, and she doesn't know exactly when I'm coming, today or tomorrow. This time, Sawyer was the one who shot Mallory a bemused look. The teen was growing bolder, trying harder to convince them that she knew what she was doing. Are you hungry? Mallory changed the subject abruptly, her mind going back to the time she'd been in this child's very position. I've got money, she lifted her chin. That isn't what I asked, Mallory replied, her voice as gentle as she could make it. This hotel comes with complimentary breakfast. We're about to go eat, so if you can wait till we load these horses, we'll take you with us and then to the bus depot. Horses? For the first time, her eyes lost their angry spark. She looked past Sawyer to the aisle where Fallon and Tipsy stood. Mallory narrowed her eyes, assessing. There are a lot of horses around here. Our job is taking care of them. You like horses? I've always wanted one. Her guard had lowered without her fully realizing it. Mallory grasped at the slim opportunity. If you tell me your real name and how old you are, you can go hang with those two while Sawyer and I finish getting ready. The girl stared as if she honestly couldn't believe the lie had been discovered. Her eyes darted to the horses and then to Sawyer. They flickered over Mallory and finally to the ground. Her internal debate was written plainly on her face. Angelica, she whispered. Coltrane. I'm 13. Coltrane, like in John. Sawyer smiled for the first time. Angelica looked away. My dad's family was related to him somehow, about 3 or 4 times removed. My mother always says my blood is as black as that family's and as evil as my father's turned out to be. Mallory's mouth hung in shock. The girl couldn't possibly mean what it sounded like she meant. Your mother said that? My mother is a terrible person. Whoa, Mallory's heart went out to the child. I see. She sighed. You don't really have an aunt in Florida, do you? Slowly, Angelica shook her head. Is there even anybody there? Mac, my father's old boyfriend. He doesn't know I'm coming. Boyfriend. Is this why your mother is upset? Your father is gay? He's dead. The words spun in Mallory's brain. The story was taking such unexpected turns it almost had to be true. Her next words came with no warning and certainly no time to think them through. You're right, Angelica. You don't know us, but I don't like the idea of you running off to a place you're not expected. You go and pet the horses and we'll take you to breakfast and you're going to tell us your whole story. We'll figure it out from there. Angelica didn't argue. With a little luck, the horses had captured her interest enough to keep her from running for the next few minutes. Once she'd moved out of earshot, Mallory turned to Sawyer. Who does she remind you of? Trouble, he said. I'm serious. You're going to say it's you, he said, but it's not. You were 16 when you first ran away. She's got to have people somewhere. She's way too young to have traveled very far on her own. I think she told us the truth when she got scared. But I can tell she's quick and clever. That paper hanging from her backpack is a ticket that says Des Moines. If she's that far from home alone, we have to help her. How? Let's bring her back to the farm. She can stay with us for a night or two. Sawyer took a step back and shook his head. Nope, Mallory, that's a terrible idea. I think so too. Angelica's voice from right beside them made them both jump. When did you get there? Sawyer asked. Told you, I'm good at sneaking. Her confident teenness was back. Came to ask the horses' names. Look, if I don't want to go to the bus depot with you, I definitely am not going to any farm. I'm not stupid. No, but you're alone and you need somebody to help you. That someone is me. Mallory gave her no choice. Sawyer scowled. Fine. Angelica looked with unflinching brashness directly at Sawyer, but only because he doesn't want me to. Mallory laughed out loud. Even Sawyer turned away to hide a smile of surprise at the speed with which her demeanor had swung from scared back to cheeky. Didn't I tell you? This one's trouble, he said. I'm no trouble, she batted her eyes. Everyone calls me Angel. There you go. That's my little excerpt.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
That was awesome.
So, do you go to the tracks a lot, or do you know a lot about horses?
Yeah, I've had horses since I was 21, I think. And now, like I said, my daughter is a horse vet. Yeah. And she started out with a racetrack practice for about 4 years. So we have a racetrack, right near us here, within about 10 miles, 15 miles. So I don't know, go once a year or so, maybe just for fun. But yeah, I have a horse, so I've had.
Yeah.
Not
what do
as
you
much
ride?
as I want to, but yeah, I can.
Do you ride Western or English?
What do I ride?
Yeah.
Mostly we ride English. I have a Western saddle. I have an Arab that doesn't get ridden a lot, so I like to use my Western saddle because he's good for trail riding. Yeah. But my daughter and her barn, they do 3-day events. So she rides mostly English. And I have ridden English, so.
I ride Western, but I've never ridden English. It's something that I think is on my bucket list eventually when I get back to Montana and back to the horses and away from the military life. But yeah, I grew up. I did.
No, I like both kinds.
Yeah. I did that. I rodeoed in high school, so we grew up with horses, but
that's cool.
Haven't ridden since for a while.
That's very cool.
Well, I love it, and I don't get to ride, or I choose to not ride. I guess I don't know. I could. My horse is right there. I go on trail rides a few times a year, but I don't ride as much as I wish I did anymore. I used to ride more when we used to have horses right at my house. We have about 5 acres, but now I keep them at my daughter's farm. It's way easier. So
yeah.
I wish I did ride more, but I put a lot of rodeo stuff and a lot of horses. There's horses in all my books. So
nice.
Yeah, I'm kind of sucker for them.
I love horses. So where did you get the inspiration then for this story?
Well, when they asked me, my couple friends asked me if I wanted to write in this series, in their Bible, I needed to find a romantic suspense. And I don't write romantic suspense normally.
Mm-hmm.
So it was something that was a little bit scary. But then, like I said, years ago, my daughter, when she was working at our racetrack, she told me the story of a veterinarian who'd come up from Arizona, I think he was from, and kind of started spiriting away other people's clients, horses.
Oh.
And these were kind of mediocre horses, and they all started to win.
Oh.
And I asked her if she knew why, and she said no, they didn't. She wasn't in the inner circle. She didn't want to be because she wouldn't, and they knew she wouldn't cheat. So, and she was a young vet at the time. Yeah. Anyway, that led to the first story in the series, The Missing by Heartbeat. And I always wanted to write a racetrack scandal. Well, then Mallory and Sawyer ended up being characters in that book. And so when I said I'd do this part of this box set, they were kind of an obvious choice to be my hero and heroine. So
yeah, I
chose them. And when I chose Angel, I thought, well, what would the angel be in my story? And when I picked the little girl, then I just knew. So she comes into their lives, and they find out what her kind of sad little background is and what she has seen that's very dangerous. And she kind of ends up in a lot of trouble, and they have to help her. So that's where the inspiration is.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I can't wait to read it. We do have some questions that popped up. Karen is our resident questionnaire. She comes up with the best questions here. What is your process for choosing your titles? And do you do it before, during, or after writing? And both of you. I mean, I guess it could be both.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for me, in this case, it was every story in this series has to start with missing, the word missing, and I didn't come up with that, so I don't know who did. So it's awkward to try and think of something that's a little bit unique, but that's where Missing by a Heartbeat was just like, you miss winning a race by just that much. And then this one, angels are one of my favorite things about Christmas. So these had to be Christmas oriented.
Yeah.
So they all take place around Christmas. Otherwise, my titles are, I am not.
I'm sorry. Did she cut out?
No.
Yeah. Well, you're not. We heard you were not.
Okay.
Sorry, you cut out.
Oh, I'm not. Okay. I said I'm not great at titles.
Oh.
I'm not great at titles. I said.
Me neither. I've got this book that I'm calling Hope Harbor, and that's because I literally can't figure out what to call it, and that's like the town. It's bad.
It sounds good to me. I like
it. Julie, what about you?
So I actually love coming up with titles. I graduated in advertising. So my undergrad was, snappy ads and copy. So I really enjoy that part of it. So in general, I like to come up with the title before the book, but I'd say 95% of the time it stays and it sticks. But, every once in a while, if the story has changed significantly, it changes. But I just generally try to think of, something that's really compelling but relates to the story, and I just kind of go from there. And I listen to a lot of music, and so a lot of times I'll just be listening to music and a phrase will catch me, or a title from a song will catch me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll twist it or something like that. So that's generally how I do it.
Yeah. I have to say, Hard to Love, my book, Hard to Love. I think that I got that from a song too, but Hard to Love, the country music, is it Bryce. I don't remember who sings it, but I listened to that over and over and over again.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I just figure it fit perfectly.
Yeah.
But yeah, but my titles, like I'm so all over the road with titles. Like sometimes I come up with them before, sometimes in the middle, sometimes like Hope Harbor. I'm like, here's my book. I don't know what the hell to call it, so help me out.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's tough.
Lizbeth, what you said before is because my book that is coming out next week is the 10th in the series, and so I don't know how y'all are, but for me with series, I really like to keep the titles match some sort of pattern.
Okay.
The 10th book, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just trying to keep that pattern going. I was like, it's getting hard.
Well, I know. I hear you, because when I did my bride series, or the 7 brides for 7 cowboys, Avon wanted to. The first 3 are the bride wore denim, and the bride wore boots, and the bride wore star. Well, it was really hard because none of the covers are gorgeous. If you ever look them up, they're wonderful, and I love them. But they don't really tell you what the books are about, except the cowboy was in the cover. So when the name of the ranch that this all takes place on is Paradise. So when I had to come up with my own titles, I kind of just broke with that completely and changed it. So now it's like I came up with Betting on Paradise, mostly because my guy was a gambler.
Oh,
well, that's it.
Poker player. And then I thought, well, now I have to keep that going. So I'm like with you, it's like, okay, Betting on Paradise. Well, now what's next? The next one's going to be Heating Up Paradise, because he's a firefighter.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, I got to come up with something else that happens in Paradise. So
yeah.
A lot of good stuff.
It's tough. I don't know.
See, with the my Kensington books, I had Whitewater Passion, and that's the one that I landed my agent with, and then I sold it to Kensington, and they took it, and then he's like, okay, write me the next book. I gave him the next book, and I was calling it All I Ask of You, because it was like dark, and he was disturbed, and I was listening to a lot of Phantom of the Opera at the time.
I love it.
And so I'm like, all I ask of you is perfect. He's like, no. You have to stay with the passion. So he's like, what's this one? So it's like Wild Passion. And then the last one, I'm like, I don't know. He's like, what are you going to call this one? I don't know. There's like a forest fire. So let's like call it Fiery Passion. And he's like, okay.
I love it.
Yeah, so
well, I think I've made 2 new best friends, because I'll be calling you, Julie. You can help me with my
yeah. It's so interesting.
All the help I can get, trust me.
Now, do you get your inspiration from your titles then? Like, do you think of the titles and then get inspired?
No, so I'm very, like, my process is really, I've decided odd. You talk to enough writers that you're like, well, I have a really odd process. I generally, when I get an idea for a story, it's usually like a snippet, a scene, and then I start to build a story around it. So once I kind of have the story built in my head, that's when I'll kind of think about the title. So no, I wouldn't really say I build the book around it. I just kind of, I have the initial story idea, which generally for me, I might like write out 5 pages, and that's what I call plotting.
Right.
And then I just
Are you a pantser?
Yes. Oh, I love it.
Sisterhood.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm a plantser. I mean, I started out pantsing, and now I kind of got to plot it out, and just to get it really thick and meaty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm clawing my way towards that. I would love to be able to plant a little, but I don't know.
Plot pantster too. I start with a little bit. I write generally to midpoint. Then I'm like, oh my God, it's all crap. What am I doing? And I'll spend time, I'll usually spend 5 or 6 days, like kind of thinking about the plot and where I want to go and where I've been. And, the characters are kind of talking to you, or they
exactly. You can't explain that to anybody else. Like, I have to write the first, I don't know, like my normal novels are probably 90, 5,000 words, and the first 30,000 are they're just talking. And finally, I feel like I can write them a real story. I mean, I kind of know what the story is, but so the problem is that I love the editing part. That's actually what my training is more editing.
Really?
I don't really like the first.
Do you
I don't
give
like the first draft part, but
because editing.
I don't know. Yeah, most authors don't like the editing part, and I want to make the words pretty. Somebody could put them out there for the first time, and I don't know. I guess that's called being an editor and not writing. So I don't know.
I think you're like
a
diamond in the rough, then, because holy cow, like we're gonna have to be besties so that I can be like, how do I edit this, Lizbeth?
Happy to do it. I don't even mind moving stuff around, but whatever.
Yeah. I'm in the middle of revisions from hell. Like I finished this story in March and I turned it into my agent in April, and we've been revising it ever since. And now she's like, okay, last revisions. And I'm like, seriously. So hopefully this is the last time. And if this book doesn't sell, I'm going to literally bang my head against the wall.
What is that word? What does that word mean?
Yeah.
Guys, what does that word mean? Sell.
All right. So we do have some questions. So how about a word count goal? Let's see what the word count goal is. What is your, what do you have a word count goal for each day and or week when you write?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do.
Do I have a goal or do I meet my goal? Which is the question. If I could, I would love to be able to write. I don't know. I mostly write, I guess, to a scene or to a break where I know either I have to think about what comes next or I'm just out of time. But I guess if I had a word count goal, it would be anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 a day, which is pretty low, actually. An awful lot of writers can write a lot more than that. I have a happy, full life with 3 grandkids.
Not to interrupt you, we had somebody on here the other day that said they wrote 20,000 words in one day. And I'm like,
oh my gosh. Like, how would you do
saw that interview. She wrote like a book in 13 days or something. Wasn't that one of your guests?
And it was like a huge, and I was like,
I
saw that.
Like, was there smoke
if
coming
that's
out
the
of your
criteria
brain?
for being on this show, I am so screwed. No. Well, for those who don't know, I mean, and I don't know, Julie, if you do it, but this month, November is NaNoWriMo. Do you guys know what that is?
Oh, my son is doing it. My 12-year-old is doing it.
National Novel.
That's awesome.
I've done it and won it. So it's 50,000 words in a month, right? And that's only 1,600 words a day approximately, and it should be very doable. And I was doing great for the first 4 days. I'm so far behind now. It's like, no. But yeah, I'm hoping to finish a book this month. So
I'm so discombobbled I can't even think about NaNoWriMo this year. But I did write Wild Passion, my second Kensington book, during NaNoWriMo. So I was able to get my 90,000 word book done at NaNoWriMo. Awesome. So I was pretty proud. That was a good year.
Awesome.
And that was my last really highly productive.
Yeah.
No, I wrote a lot at the beginning of this year. I literally wrote 3 books in like 4 months. Before May. And then I think I'm like brain fried and just kind of
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if I'd ever write again 4 books and whatever.
Oh, it was crazy.
Anyway, I should, but that take 2 seconds. I see all kinds of names on the comments that I know that are from my hometown and my home group. So I saw like Robin and Karen and Domi and Deanna and so anyway, Patty, hello. Yeah. Thank you for coming.
And you know what? On that, Julie, we should probably pop you up here and let you get going.
Ooh, I can't.
Oh, I popped her out too soon. Sorry, Elizabeth.
So I have to put my glasses on. All the staring at the screen day after day, I won't be able to read the words on my paper. I apologize. And this scene is from the first book in my Highlander Vows and Tangled Heart series. I thought I would read a scene from the book that's coming out, but I decided most of you guys probably don't know my books, and it made sense to me to read the scene from the first book that kicked the series off because it's a 10-book series. So anyway, I will attempt to read it. After locating King Edward's man and delivering the news of Marion de Lacy's death, Ian and Rory Mac made their way out of the friary and then mounted their horses to ride north to Pilgrim Street. Silence lay thick as a Highland fog over Newcastle at this late hour, and each time their horses' hooves struck the stone street, the sound seemed deafening. Though inns crowded both sides of the streets, all had their doors shut and most were dark. The tenants abed for the night. It made no difference, though. They were headed to the northwest in the direction of yet another friary. There was a priest there by the name of Father Thomas, who was an old friend of the MacLeod clan, and he had offered to bed them down for the night on their return trip to Scotland. Ian only wanted a few hours of sleep before departing. The sound of neighing horses reached his ears over the clopping of his horse Olaf's hooves, followed forthwith by the hum of voices, low voices, male voices. As they neared the end of Pilgrim Street, torches lit the night near the gate. A group of 4 men seemed to have formed a semicircle. As Ian and Rory Mac drew closer to the group, he caught a glimpse of one of the men's surcoats, burgundy and gold with a gold snake on the front, Frost's personal arms that he and his followers wore. Ian had seen the man fight in tournaments, so he knew the coat of arms. Ian led the horse off the street so they would not be seen. Frost, Ian said under his breath as he quickly dismounted and tethered his horse. Aye, Rory Mac answered, doing the same. I saw the snake. What do you want to do? Ian scratched his stubble. Frost needed to suffer for what he had done to Neil. The question was how best to get retribution. Before he could decide, a woman's scream filled the night. He scrambled toward the shadows of the side street and motioned for Rory Mac to follow. He stopped near enough to see, but not be seen or heard. A lass with hair pale as the moon, a face sculpted in determination, and a beautiful body wrapped in a gown that fit her form rather than hung loose like those the Highland lasses wore, gripped a dagger with her slender fingers. She held it steady and pointed it at Frost. Behind her, a man lay with his back to the sky. The man on the ground groaned. When Frost began to advance toward the woman and man, the fair-haired Sassenach held her dagger higher. Don't come a step closer. Ian started, then quickly shed his shock like snakeskin. He smiled in grim satisfaction as he readied his sword to aid the woman and seek revenge on Frost. It was a stroke of good fortune that he had come upon the night. Should we help now? Rory Mac asked in a low tone. Hold for one moment. We will use the distraction the woman is sure to provide to our benefit. Rory Mac frowned. Why do you think you wouldn't dare stab me? Frost snarled at the woman, cuffing off Rory Mac's question. I most certainly will stab you in the heart if you come closer, she snapped. I'm offended that you believe I would lie. Ian gave Rory Mac a triumphant smile while biting back a burst of laughter at how outrageous the woman's comments, given her situation. The Sassenach looked as though she meant it true enough to Ian. Frost offered her a bored look, and when he did, the Sassenach, to Ian's astonishment, turned the dagger on herself and held it to her throat. If you or any of your men move again without giving me your solemn vow that you will not kill this man, she motioned to the man on the ground, I will slit my throat, and you'll not get what you want most. Now, this was a most curious plan. Ian exchanged an amazed look with Rory Mac. With the bold claim she'd just made, he hoped the woman knew what she was doing. And what is it I most desire? Frost asked. Me, she answered promptly and without a trace of boastfulness. And you want me alive, to be sure. It certainly makes it easier to acquire the land you covet from my father if I'm alive, now doesn't it? Ian felt himself gape. Marion de Lacy was alive, and she was no cold, proper Sassenach after all, and she most certainly was not weak. His wonder vanished with his next breath. She was alive, and she would soon be his wife. Ian is I, that's my bride, Ian answered, fierce anger now flowing through his veins as he determined how to most effectively attack Frost while ensuring Marion would not be harmed. Marion waved her dagger in the air, stealing Ian's attention for a moment. I'll have your vow to let the Scot go, she demanded in a voice of steel, as she tilted her head toward the form on the ground. As Rory Mac hissed in disbelief beside him, Ian found his gaze drawn briefly to where the man lay. He was dressed in a plain wool cloak, and whoever the man was, he'd taken pains not to be noticed. Was he here for Marion? Had she planned to escape marrying Frost? Ian found he hoped so. As one of the knights moved his hand to his weapon, Ian's thoughts raced forward, establishing a plan in his mind. He nudged Rory Mac. You take the two men farthest from us. I'll get Marion and take out Frost and the other knight. Rory Mac nodded. Now, he said in a fierce whisper, as the knight closest to Marion lunged toward her. Ian surged forward, withdrawing his sword and closing the distance between himself and the knight who had grabbed Marion. Her eyes widened in shock at the sight of him, and her dagger flashed upward, then hovered as if she wasn't sure who was the greater threat. In a rush, her lips pressed firmly together, and she plunged her dagger into the knight's arm. The man roared, drawing his sword up to counter. Ian knocked the sword away with his own, then brought his blade down to finish the knight. He fell to the ground in a heap. Ian glanced over at Rory Mac, who had already felled one knight and was engaged with the other. Ian looked away just in time to see Frost launching toward him. Behind Ian, Marion screamed. He raised his sword once more, and his weapon met Frost in midair, the sound of metal against metal echoing in the night. They withdrew, circled each other again, and met once more in midair, but Ian spun, brought his sword down quickly, and struck a blow to Frost's back. He stumbled and cursed, but straightened. He stared hard at Ian, as if he had only just realized who Ian was. The knight wiped a hand across his face and moved his sword from one hand to the other, his gaze moving from Ian to behind him, where Ian could feel Marion hovering near his feet. He had no idea what she was doing, until suddenly she moved to his side, her bloody dagger in her hand. He barely knew the woman, but he already respected her courage. What are you doing in England, MacLeod? Frost thundered. I came to speak to your king regarding David's release, and now I'm here to collect my bride, Lady Marion, by orders of your king. Beside him, Marion stiffened, but he could not chance looking at her to see her face and being distracted. You sniveling, lying swine, Frost bellowed. I'll see you dead before I let you take Marion anywhere, and I'll see you quiet, Ian growled. He rushed forward as Rory Mac came at Frost from the side. Rory Mac knocked the sword out of the unsuspecting knight's hand, and Ian shoved his open palm into the man's throat. Frost doubled over, gasping. Ian pulled Marion to him, shifting her behind him, and kicked his foot into Frost's stomach to send him sprawling onto his back. He placed his boot on the man's heaving chest and his sword at the knight's throat. I have a good mind to kill you, Ian said. Suddenly, a very soft, warm body pressed against his back. You mustn't kill unless your life is at stake, Marion scolded. He's no threat presently. Marion's warm breath tickled the back of his neck and made him shudder. No woman other than his late wife had ever made him react so. He frowned, as much at his response to her as to the fact that she was right about sparing Frost. He could ensure the knight did not follow him if Frost was intent upon doing so without killing him. Put him to sleep, Ian told Rory Mac, who grinned in answer. Frost jerked as if to stop whatever was coming, but Ian simply reminded him of his deadly situation by pressing his sword against the man's windpipe. Frost still glaring at Ian, but when Rory Mac hit him on the side of the head with the hilt of his sword and Frost's head lolled sideways, the glare vanished, much to Ian's satisfaction. He removed his foot from Frost's chest and looked around him. Rory Mac had felled two of the man's knights, and Ian had dispatched the other. Behind Marion, the Scot on the ground still lay motionless. Who is that? Ian demanded, pointing at the man. Marion narrowed her eyes, which were as green as the lush rolling hills of the Highland in the summer. Who are you to make demands of me? I already told you I'm to wed you by orders of your king. You did not tell me, she bit out. You bellowed it at Frost, and forgive me if I don't readily believe you. I need proof. Ian produced the decree stamped by King Edward's ring and signature. Her eyes widened considerably as she read it. But why? Does this have to do with the negotiations you mentioned? She sounded angry. He supposed he couldn't blame her, being traded from one man to another as she had been. Because, he said gently, considering how much he should tell her and deciding to be as truthful as he could, he would tell her the remainder when he knew he could trust her. At the moment, he didn't even know how she had arrived here. Had she feigned her drowning? It seemed likely. King Edward wants to seal a bargain between himself, David, and me. Her brows dipped together. What sort of bargain involves me? She asked obstinately. He sighed. I'll tell you all when we are safely on the way to Scotland. I'm not moving until you tell me, she said, crossing her arms over her chest. Ian shared a look with Rory Mack, who gave a nod of understanding. With one swift motion, Ian picked Marion up, snatched her bloody dagger out of her hands, and slung her over his shoulder. His future wife bellowed as she beat her fists against his back. Ian took a long, approving look at her perfectly formed bottom. He may not want a wife with his head or heart, but his body certainly responded to Marion's. He ground his teeth and caught Rory Mack studying him. Ian glared at his friend while handing the dagger to him. "Keep this until the Sassenach does not want to use it on me." Rory Mack grunted. "I may have it forever then," the Scot teased as he strode toward the man who'd been lying on the ground, his face in the dirt, but was now struggling to sit up. "Put me down," Marion shouted. Ian ignored her for a moment as he stared at the man who was now standing with Rory Mack's help. The man wobbled, but Rory Mack steadied him, and then the man looked at Ian. For the second time since coming to Newcastle, Ian stared in shock at Neil MacLeod. He strode, with Marion still cursing and hitting him, toward his clansmen. "Neil," he growled, then quickly softened his tone when he realized Neil had blood on the left side of his face. Neil moved his hand toward his ear and winced. "Frost, the clot-head, took my other ear and my sword." He groaned and swayed again. "Put me down," Marion demanded again. "I can help him." Ian set her on her feet. "Be quick about it," he ordered, wanting to be gone from this place. Marion pulled up her skirt, displaying her slender ankles, which Ian found himself staring at until he felt her stare on him. He pulled his gaze to her face. "How can I help?" She held the edge of her skirt out to him. "Tear this. I need to dress his ear." Ian complied, then handed the strip of material to her. She took it from him with weary eyes. "Do you have any spirits?" "I, for cleansing the wound?" he asked. "Yes." Ian took Neil's arm and nodded to Rory Mack. "Fetch it." Rory Mack tipped his head and rushed off. Ian turned to Neil. "What are you doing here? You didn't mention a word of coming. How do you keen Lady Marion?" As he waited for Neil to answer, Marion rushed over to the knight Ian had felled. Beside the man was Neil's sword. As she struggled to lift it, Neil spoke. "I dinna truly know," he said, giving Marion a disgruntled look. "My cousin Angus has been her father's stable master for years, and he recently sent word to me asking to bring her back to Scotland to the MacDonald clan. It was nae till I got here that he told me the whole of it, that she was to marry Frost against her wishes. He begged me to take her to safety, and I could nae refuse." "I'm so sorry," Marion cried to Neil, dragging the sword behind her as she moved toward them. Ian turned to help her, but the murderous look she gave him told him she wished to get the sword to Neil on her own, and she did. Her fortitude impressed Ian as she heaved and huffed and finally lifted the sword toward Neil. "I'm sorry you lost your other ear because of me." Neil tried to take the sword, but he faltered, and Ian quickly snatched it from Marion. Neil frowned but nodded. "It was nae your fault," the Scot said to Marion. "It's Frost's fault. He's wicked." They all glanced at Frost, who still lay in a swoon. Neil's gaze locked on Ian. "May I borrow your dagger?" Ian knew the man wanted retribution, and rightly so. He handed his dagger to the Scot and then helped him hobble over to Frost, releasing Neil when he seemed steady. Marion made haste behind him. "What are you going to do?" she whispered, her voice filled with fear. Did she think Neil would kill a man who could not defend himself? Neil paused and glanced back at her. "I'm going to take out his tongue so the man can spew no more evil orders." When Marion swayed, Ian reached out with his free hand and seized her arm to keep her upright. "You should look away so you dinna faint," Neil commented. "I assure you I do not faint," she said, sounding irritated. Yet the fingers she had lifted to her temple trembled. "Neil," her voice had taken on the soft tone that Ian recognized at once as one of persuasion. "It seems a bit much, almost evil to take his tongue. Is there not another way to get your retribution?" Neil tilted his head in thought and finally said, "I suppose." As Neil bent down, Rory Mack approached and gave Ian a questioning look, which Ian answered with a shrug. Suddenly, Neil plunged Ian's dagger into Frost's favored fighting arm. Frost flinched and howled, and Ian silenced him with a quick punch to the face. Frost fell silent once again, and Marion gasped, turning quickly away. When Neil stood, the three men exchanged a look of understanding and spit as one at Frost's feet. The man was without honor, and now he was defenseless, at least temporarily. Silently, Marion turned, took the spirits from Rory Mack, and cleaned Neil's wounds. He hissed and moaned until the dressing was wrapped around his head. Then he slumped against Rory Mack. Ian caught Rory Mack's eye. "I need a minute." Rory Mack nodded and led Neil a short distance away. Uncertainty glimmered in Marion's eyes as he moved close to her so they could speak privately. Immediately, her scent of Frasier surrounded him. He forced himself to keep his attention on his task. "How did you end up here?" he asked, though he'd meant to wait until they were away to have the discussion. She wrapped her arms tightly around herself, looking so vulnerable that he suddenly yearned to enfold her in his embrace. She knocked her chin up as if to tell him she was not sad or maybe not afraid. My father is a black-hearted devil who thought to marry me to Frost for the man's allied knights. To avoid the marriage, I feigned my death and then made my way here. Neil already told you of our meeting. Her gaze grew flinty. But you, sir, will be stunned if you think my father will be happy that we are to be married. Ian nodded, relieved there could be truth between them. I keen he'll nae be happy, Marion. Your king suspects your father of plotting to overthrow him. What? She gasped. Did King Edward tell you this himself? Aye, he suspects that Frost and your father are allying to attempt to take the crown. He wants me to marry you and hopes Frost will abandon their plot if he cannot have land presently. And what's the benefit to you, she asked, her tone wounded. Edward will talk with the Scots to discuss David's release. Her gaze burned into him. Marriage to a woman you do not love is a steep price. Aye, he agreed, his voice gentle as he could make it. It is, but David is my friend and he needs me. She sighed, a long, tired sound. I was coming to you, she said. Isn't that odd? Her voice had taken on a brittle, almost shaky quality. He suspected she was on the verge of unraveling under the strain of the day. Why were you coming to me? I thought you sought a place in your uncle's clan. There was no need to tell her that her uncle would turn her away and bind her in marriage to Ian anyway, so that Ian would be bound to the MacDonalds. Angus, my friend, asked me to join your clan. He was certain you'd allow it and might even find me a husband. She laughed, the gentle rumble tinged with the high notes of hysteria. I suppose there's no need for you to find me a husband now. Marion tilted her head back so that her thick, pale hair fell over her delicate shoulders. Long dormant desire sparked within him, and he had the urge to brush her hair off her neck and let her fingers graze her skin to see if it was as smooth as it appeared. He knew it was not wrong to hunger for a woman who was to be his wife. It did not wipe away his past. She could never replace what he'd felt for Catriona, yet guilt filled his belly. So you've decided, Nay, to defy your king and marry me? She scowled at him. I don't have a choice. If I stay here, my father will simply force me to marry Frost, and then I would be the wife of an evil, cruel man who is also intent to overthrow the king. She looked at him dubiously, as if judging how much to say. I do not think our marriage will stop them. Ian nodded. I did not think so either. Her mouth parted at his admission. So what then? Will King Edward require more of you if my father and Frost continue with their plot? Aye, Edward will require my men to fight to bring down your father if it comes to that. She sucked her bottom lip between her teeth. I was afraid of something like that. He expected her to weep at the unfairness of it all. Instead, she drew herself up and unwrapped her arms from around her waist. I'll marry you on one condition. He refrained from pointing out that she was in no position to have conditions. It was kinder to let her state them. What is it? He asked, motioning for her to follow him. He led her to Rory, Mac, and Neil, and the men fell into step behind him as the four of them moved down the street toward the horses. We must rescue Angus from my father, she finally said. I would never leave a man of mine behind, Marion, he said, irritated that she'd think he might. She set her hands on her hips. What about a woman of yours? It depends on the woman, he replied, just to see what Marion looked like when outraged, and he wasn't disappointed. Her eyes glittered in the moonlit night, and her full lips parted as she huffed in a breath that made her chest rise enticingly. Suddenly, all he could think of is what she might look like in passion. Guilt shoved at him, but he shoved back. Marion pursed her lips. Angus is a good man. Of course he is. He's a MacLeod, Ian boasted, and I'll nae leave him to the likes of your father. I went to your home to get you, and your father was set to be in for accidentally starting a fire. What? She asked and grabbed Ian's hand. We must make haste. When my father gets in a temper, he can become excessive with his violence. Ian had a sudden sinking suspicion. Did he ever do that with you? He asked casually. Sometimes, she said with a shrug that belied the hurt that crossed her face. She lowered her head as they rushed on, and fierce anger burned a hole in Ian's gut. Death was too good for a man who would beat his daughter, but Ian would not kill de Lacy unless to defend himself or Marion. The king had commanded as much, and Ian would not risk hindering David's release. After he secured the weapons onto his horse and then untethered Olaf, Ian helped Marion onto his mount. He swung into the saddle behind her and pulled her between his thighs and against his chest to protect her. She started to wiggle, but he put a staying hand on her hip. Didn't do that, he demanded through clenched teeth. Lust had taken hold of him, and riding would be painful if he did not gain control. She stilled immediately. Please hurry. I must save Angus. He was glad the Sassenach was facing forward and could not see him gaping at her. She must save Angus. Her loyalty to Angus pleased him, as did her courage, but God's truth, such courage concerned him as well. If she was too courageous, she was more likely to do something foolish and get herself killed. I'll rescue Angus and you'll remain with Rory McAneil, Ian said, clicking his tongue to get Olaf to go once Rory McAneil had settled on Rory Mac's horse. They moved down the street toward the gate that would lead them out of Newcastle and back to Marian's home. As they rode toward the same gate through which they'd entered earlier, Ian turned to Neil to ask him of Angus, but Neil was slumped forward in the saddle with Rory Mac holding the man around his waist to keep him upright. Ian had a vague memory of hearing something about Angus, but the recollections were not clear. He stared at Marian for a moment before speaking. Why did Angus come to England to work for your father? She turned her head slightly, presenting him with her perfect profile. Her nose wrinkled and then smooth. He came with my mother when she was forced to marry my father. Angus felt he owed her a debt. He was to come to Scotland soon after I departed, yet he had to wait a short while to avoid my father's becoming suspicious. He glanced at Rory Mac to see if he knew of Angus's past, but Rory Mac shook his head. I didn't ken much about Angus MacLeod. Neil never speaks of him, but I do remember my father talking years ago about his friend Angus leaving Scotland for England. They rode in silence for a few minutes, but when the iron gates of Newcastle came into view, Marian spoke. When we get to my father's home, you must let me go into the castle to save Angus. I'm afraid father will try to kill you and make it seem an accident. He'll not want me dead, at least not until he has his knights. Ian gaped at Mary and noticed Rory Mac was doing the same thing. Rory Mac shook his head, a bewildered expression on his face. Ian scowled at the top of Marian's head. She needed to understand a few things. You offend me by implying I cannot keep myself and you safe. He slid an arm around her stomach and tightened his hold as they neared the gate. If there was to be trouble, he wanted to have a firm grip on her if he needed to gallop away. She stiffened under his touch. You implied I couldn't defend myself by commanding me to remain behind when we get to my father's. He frowned. You're a woman. No more explanation was needed. I didn't ken how it was before, but now you'll let me keep you from danger. You will do as I say. Are you always this arrogant? She demanded, trying to scoot forward on the horse. Ian pulled her back to him and grinned. Aye, it's good of you to praise me so. That was not praise, she grumbled. I fear we will not fare well at all. He chuckled. As long as you obey me, we'll fare nicely. He didn't hear her response, having shifted his attention to the guards, but whatever she was saying, her tone was sullen and it made him want to laugh. Taming the Sassenach was going to be fun, and it had been a long time since he'd had any fun. Okay.
I gotta say, the whole time I've got Jamie Fraser in my head. Seriously. And I'll also admit that I did not watch Outlander until like a month or two ago. And then I'm like, all right, because everybody kept saying, you gotta watch it, you gotta watch it.
Yeah.
All of our readers. So I did. And now I can't stop thinking about him when I listen to you.
I saw a comment that said, say hi to Jamie Fraser.
Yeah.
So I think next time you go over there too, we'll have to look.
That's real. And then some pictures. Right?
Yeah.
They do make a big deal about it over there, though. I mean, there are postcards of them in every shop. So I thought it was pretty fun.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Isn't that weird? Yeah, they love it. So.
We do have a couple questions. We are past time, but it's okay. We'll run a little longer because they want to know. So, are your books an audiobook?
Mine are not, sadly to say. That's my next thing to look into is getting audiobooks. But so far, no.
Julie's are. Okay. And then can they see your book covers? Do you have them handy?
Now? Like they want to see them now?
If you have them handy.
I have my most recent.
I have the one that I just read from.
Here's the one let's see. Missing by Heartbeat.
There you
That's
go.
the one before this one. There you go. I can get do you have a place where we can post them? Like, is there a video portion of Romance Happy Hour?
If you want to just post it on Romance Happy Hour, you're more than welcome to. Okay. Just be like, here's my book cover. Yeah. And then, so Karen says, do you have any unfinished books that you may finish someday?
Oh, yeah.
Like a folder full.
Yes.
Yes, I have an Alaskan series that I have 2 books written, and my agent and my editor about 5 years ago said absolutely not. They couldn't sell science and they couldn't sell Alaska. So I intend to publish those myself. I can't find somebody to, Yeah, we were
I
lucky. I
thought
lived in Alaska.
Alaska was hot a couple years ago.
I would think so too. And I don't know. I set them. They were kind of fun, and I love them. So I will get those done. And then I have my Scottish contemporaries that's what I'll work on next. So yeah, there's 3 or 4 of them.
Fun.
What about you,
But
Julie?
Yes, so I write historical, but I love to dabble, in contemporary because I read a lot of contemporary.
Yeah.
I really actually read all over the place. So I'll read straight contemporary and I'll read paranormal. So I at one time started a paranormal series and wrote the first book and just threw it out there and was like, there you go, world.
Oh my gosh, we're twins. Like I did that too.
That's not the best idea.
No.
I would love to go back though and finish the series, but the historicals are where I started and they have the fan base and they are what make me a living. So it's really hard to break away. But
I know it feels decadent to do something that's not in your wheelhouse.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to try a futuristic one sometime. I mean, honestly, you guys who write historicals, I am just in awe. I just bow to you guys because you know more than professors about, time and the place. And I don't know, people say, oh, you have to be smart to write contemporary. I go, nah, I mean,
I don't think that's true.
I mean, you have to be smart.
I mean,
the research is easier to do, I think, but
I think you have to be smart to be a writer in general.
That's true. All right. I consider myself very smart. I guess the part of contemporary that's hard is that there's so many sensibilities. You just don't get it right because there are people who can really call you on it. Although you have the same issue. When I was on the Avon Authors Loop, I'll never forget. People would write in and go like, "Okay, so I have a duchess who is now divorced and her uncle wants the throne, and what do you call her cat?" I mean, it was stuff like that.
Right.
They would know. So it was like, oh, you guys are just so smart. I don't know.
And then I'm going to lead us to the end here, but when did you realize that you'll be an amazing author? This is Jomi. Wanted to know, when did you realize you'll be an amazing author, and has it always been a childhood dream of yours?
I used to write when I was a kid. When I was 10 and 11 years old, I would make up stories about being married to whatever famous person that I loved at the time. So I've been, Mrs. Paul McCartney and Mrs. dating myself for sure. And then I just sort of slowly moved into writing, characters that I made up myself.
Yeah.
And so, I always wanted to be a writer. And then I went to school and got a journalism degree. So I worked for newspapers for a little while, weekly newspapers mostly. Then I raised my kids, and then I went to work as an editor for 6 years for a couple farm magazines, which was pretty funny since I'm a city kid. And so, I've always wanted to be a writer. And then we were lucky enough in 2005 to move to Alaska for 3 years. And
wow.
We're in Alaska.
We were in Anchorage.
I was in Valdez. I lived in Valdez for 2 years before Texas.
Yeah, that we got to travel a lot. It was just my husband and I. My kids were in college at that point, so it was just the two of us. And Valdez is a cool place, although interesting city. I mean, especially after the earthquake and stuff.
Yeah.
But no, it was funny. So that's when I got really involved in writing and got involved with RWA big time. And I won the Golden Heart contest in 2010, and then that got me my. And the rest is history, I hope.
2010 is when I first started writing books. So
yeah. Well,
that's
it's a good long career too, though. Just think about how long ago that was already. It's really sad.
Know, it's crazy. I should be making more money by now.
Well, there's a club for that. It's called 90% of us.
And Linda has to say, in the absence of Dylan, she's going to tell you that on Dylan's behalf that I've lived everywhere. That's the big running joke here at RHH is that I've lived everywhere.
You've lived everywhere.
Being a military spouse and
Well, yeah.
Where's your favorite place? Do you have a favorite place you've lived?
We loved Alaska. We
like
loved
that.
Alaska.
Isn't that you either love it or it's a nice place to visit.
Yeah.
Love it. You always want to go back. I still have wonderful friends there and beautiful.
We loved Alaska and we loved Washington State.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're Westerners, so
I love it.
Yeah. Well, we are 10 minutes over the time, and Dylan's gonna kill me because she wants to put this on Instagram, and so she's like, we got to keep it under 60 minutes.
Oh no.
She knows that you had me on here tonight, and it's a hopeless cause.
So we'll see if we can get this on Instagram or not, but we'll figure it out. But it was nice talking to you guys. You ladies,
so lovely. Thank you so much for inviting me, Julie. It was wonderful to get to know you. Let's keep in touch. We'll keep in touch. And Dawn, same with you. I see your name all over. So good luck with your revisions.
Yeah, good luck.
If I can get them done, we'll see. This is like my
You will.
Yeah.
You will. I took about a year. It was about a year and a half between books for me. So it's all right. It goes. It goes. You'll get it.
Yeah.
I predict.
Yeah. This is my book that just.
Yeah.
I'm working on one right now that has been I don't know. I put it down and pick it up, put it down. It's the book that will not be written. So yeah, I'm kind of at it. I'm still on the first draft, so blah.
All right, we're gonna say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I saw your names. Thank you.